Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the host of Independent Thought. My name is Desmond Price. No matter where you are in the world, I want to thank you for giving me a few minutes of your day to hear my thoughts. As always, we have a great show for you today. Now, here are our topics.
Hey, Indie Thought listeners. Has this past year helped you rediscover your creative and crafty side? Well, then you're going to love our sponsor for today's episode. Bathing Beauties Beads is a full-service bead shop in the heart of downtown Missoula. Whether it's seed beads, semi-precious stones, vintage beads, or just materials to make a project, they have something for every person and every price range. Not from Missoula? Don't worry. They have an extensive online store and they will ship directly to you. Whether you're a beginner or a pro, they'll welcome you and help you make your next project a reality. You can find them online at Bathing Beauties Beads on Instagram and Facebook or at bathingbeautiesbeads.com. And don't forget to use offer code INDEPENDENTTHOUGHT at checkout to save 15% on your order.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 6th bonus episode of Independent Thought. My name is Desmond Price. If you are hearing this episode right now because you are subscribed to my podcast and you got a little push notification that told you that this episode was coming out, thank you so much for being a subscriber. And to everyone else who is not currently subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. It is the best way to keep up with this podcast and for whenever these random bonus episodes will drop. These are some gold here, people. So I just want to let you know that hitting the subscribe button, best way to stay up with all things independent thought. Now, this is not the resumption of season 3. Season 3 episode 12 will be out at this time next week. So on the 22nd, you will be hearing season 3 episode 12. I do have a great guest lined up for that episode, so definitely make sure that you are subscribed so that you are here to witness that episode. I guess you're not really witnessing it, it's audio, but still the same idea applies. Now, for this particular bonus episode, I just wanted to take a second to come to you and tell you about all of the great episodes that just happened during the first half of season 3. Maybe you didn't listen to all of them, or maybe this is the first time that you are here, at my podcast. I want to give you just a quick recap about the episodes that have already happened and why you should go back and check them out. And I want everyone to know that as far as new episodes are concerned, like I just said, the new episodes will be coming back next week, and I have at least 10 more before the season ends later in May. So without further ado, I just want to say that if you have any comments about any of these episodes, please DM me on Instagram or on Twitter at Independent Thought. That is the best way to get in contact with me and just share your thoughts with me. Let me know. Are these episodes, great? Are they terrible? Tell me your feelings. But let's begin with our quote unquote recap of season 3. So the very first episode after I came back from my break is called The Aftermath of the 2020 Election, where we talked about what exactly, you know, what exactly was going on with Donald Trump, why he was calling the election a fraud, and how he wasn't really giving the full picture about what was going on because of the different voting laws that were happening from state to state, and how without giving that context about why those states, laws were important, it was really easy for a lot of people to get caught up with the idea that the election was quote unquote stolen when it actually was not. And I also go into how politicizing how we vote can lead to such outcomes that he was claiming didn't seem regular, or why there were some irregularities. So I highly, say go back and check out that first episode, The Aftermath of the 2020 Election. That is a solo episode that I did the last week of December. The second episode is called Happiness is a Function of Expectation. I'm not going to lie to you. I love that quote. And I'm not sure that it exactly applies to the episode itself, but it had to be the title. But in the beginning of that episode, I talked about President Trump vetoing the National Defense Authorization Act and the reasons why he did it. Spoiler alert, one of the reasons why he did it was because he didn't want certain military bases in this country to have their names changed because they were the names of Confederate generals. Definitely go back to that episode if you want to hear how I feel about that topic in particular. But I also talked about his push for $2,000 checks and why I thought that that was important, especially coming from a Republican president. And then in the second half of that episode, my guest, the flex coach, came on and we talked about the importance of self-awareness and kind of how to get out of your own way and kind of live the best version of your own life. So definitely go check out that episode, as well as checking out my, like my guest podcast. It's called The Flex Coach. The link is in the bio of that episode. Episode 3 of season 3 is called We Can Agree on That. And in the beginning part of that episode, I basically talk about the absurdity that went along the lines of the second stimulus package, the one that was passed at the end of December where we got those $600 checks. I talked about how Congress basically had that bill given to them like 6 hours before they were supposed to vote on it, and the bill was 5,500 pages. There was a lot of absurdity going on with that bill, but I laid out in detail what exactly was going on with it and where some of the money was going that was in that bill and why you should care about that. And then my guest for that episode is Hunter Coleman, and we talked about why he voted for Trump and basically where we could agree on things, that we were trying to line up how our politics, found some kind of like consensus, even though we voted differently in the past. So the next episode after that is called Chaos at the Capitol. That's episode 4 of season 3. So obviously, I'm talking about what happened with the insurrection at the Capitol. I talk about the origins of Stop the Steal, which was the campaign. Well, not the campaign. It was basically the rallies that were being organized that were claiming that the election was being stolen from Donald Trump. So I go into an explanation about how that got started and what exactly was being said by people who thought that the election was stolen. I also talk about the narrative surrounding the Capitol Police, about how they were being called white supremacists and why I found an issue with the police who were at the Capitol being called that. I definitely encourage people to go check out that in particular because that is a conversation that I felt like was not getting justice served to it. And finally, in that episode, I talked about why I thought it was ridiculous that the Republicans in the Senate and the House were only protesting the results of certain states, but not other states, and how exactly that made no sense whatsoever. So definitely go back and check out that episode, Chaos at the Capitol. Episode 5 of this season is called Biden's Stimulus Package. And this is me referencing the third stimulus, which is the one that we're probably the most just known for currently because it's the one that just passed in real time. This is the stimulus package that was signed into effect just last week. So I break down what exactly is in that package and why you should care about the different details that are in that stimulus, including what was supposed to be the $15 an hour minimum wage and how exactly it was going to be different than other minimum wage increases of the past. And my guest for that episode is Janae Strickland Nunn, who is the host of the Confessions of a Red Couch podcast. And amongst a variety of things that we talked about, one of the things we talked about was the importance of being a Black woman who is a teacher in a STEM field and the importance of representation, in and around, like where she lived at in the area of Houston, Texas. So definitely go check that out, and definitely check out her podcast, Confessions from a Red Couch. I mean, her podcast is absolutely amazing. I'm subscribed, I listen to it all the time. I definitely recommend it. Definitely go check that out if you have the chance. Episode 6 of season 3, China's concentration camps. This was an episode that, for those of you who are subscribed right now, I might have DM'd you and asked you if you would check this episode out and tell me what you think about it. This episode and the episode I covered after this were very important to me. I had been kind of sitting on this story for several months, but was waiting for the right time where our politics kind of like dried up a little bit. Well, not dried up, but kind of like it felt like it was the right time for me to cover this subject. And it is such an important topic that I feel like people need to be aware of, because atrocities like this are able to kind of form and maintain because of the fact that so many people in the world have no idea that they're going on. And I'm not going to be able to cover every atrocity that's happening in the world, but as I do cover each one that I am able to cover, I just want to echo it just over and over and over again, how important it is that we all talk about what's going on, because it is through our silence that things like this are happening. So in this episode, I discuss who exactly, are in these concentration camps, why these people are in these camps, and what you should know about what's happening in these camps. And my guest for this episode goes by the name of Vladislav Frederick. And we discuss kind of like his workings as a political canvasser and the kind of the benefits and the limitations of political outreach as they currently are designed here in our country. And I just want to say that there are 2 different bonus episodes, 2 and 3, that are attached to this episode. So definitely check those out as well. Depending on what platform you're using, a bonus episode might not be mixed in with the regular episodes. They might be at the very bottom of the available episodes. I know that for platforms like Apple and for Castbox, you have to scroll to the very bottom of the episode lists, like all the way like before season 1, just to see bonus episodes. But other platforms like Google Podcasts and Spotify, they're kind of mixed in right where they were released. So depending on what platform you're using, you might not see the bonus episodes where they should be. So definitely go take a look for them. If you've noticed that you haven't seen one, there should be 5 of them currently. So episode 7 of season 3 is Neuralink, what it is and why you should care. And I gotta say, again, just like the episode previous to this, this is a subject that needs a lot more attention. Neuralink and other brain-machine interfaces could fundamentally change everything about human existence. Everything. And so knowing what Neuralink is and how it's going to be implemented and what it's eventually going to be capable of doing, I think is vital for us to know what that is now, so we can start having conversations about its efficacy. Some people have DM'd me and said, I don't think it's a big deal. Other people have DM'd me and they were frightened. I'm in the frightened camp, but tell me, go please listen to that episode, Neuralink, and you tell me, how does that technology make you feel? And if you are interested in that subject, please share that episode on your social media with people in your everyday life, please. And my guest for that episode is Allison Adam Buskey. And we discuss her process going through our immigration system and why she's involved with environmental law. Great conversation with Allison. I hope to have her again on in the future. Definitely go check her out. Her Instagram information is listed in the episode notes of that episode. Episode 8 of season 3 is called Multiple Perspectives. Had some technical difficulties recording this episode, but it was a great episode to do. My guests in the first half of the episode are Hunter Coleman and Lloyd Ogden, who I had Hunter on in the third episode of season 3. We can agree on that. And Lloyd's been on several times before. He was on 3 times during season 2. So we had a great conversation about whether or not we should raise the minimum wage. And I think both me and Hunter and Lloyd, all of us, had different takes on this. So it was a great kind of like back and forth conversation. And there is a bonus episode, bonus number 4, is linked to this episode, and the 3 of us discuss the filibuster and whether or not we should be getting rid of it. And so I highly recommend that episode as well as the bonus episode attached to it. And in the second half of Multiple Perspectives, I have my guest Dalton Fiddick on, and we discuss why he voted for Trump in 2016 and in 2020. And so that is a great conversation. Definitely check out that whole episode, Multiple Perspectives. It's kind of a longer one, but I think it's definitely worth the listen. So now, episode 9, Biden's executive orders. In the first part of this episode, I discussed Trump's second impeachment and why I thought it was an absolute joke. Definitely go listen to what I had to say about that on that particular episode, as well as the particular executive orders that Biden has kind of like written into law in the first like 30 days that he's been in office, and how the executive orders that I agreed with and the ones that I disagreed with. So definitely go check that part out. And my guest for this episode is Lynette Farmer. She is the host of the Nice to Meet You podcast. Again, one of my favorite podcasts to listen to. I definitely recommend you checking out her podcast. It's absolutely great. She's on a break right now, but she'll be back with her next season here in a couple weeks. So definitely go check her out. This conversation wasn't so much political. I have said before in the past that not every conversation I have on Independent Thought will be strictly about politics. My slogan on Instagram, for instance, is life, politics, and everything in between. And so this conversation kind of bordered more on the life perspective, but there are some different points in there where we have to talk about race and how it's affected in the workplace and just unfortunate things that people have to deal with, people of color have to deal with. So definitely go check out that episode, Biden's executive orders. My 10th episode of this season is also the 50th episode of Independent Thought, and that is called What is the Green New Deal? Now, I wasn't sure when I was eventually going to get the Green New Deal worked into this podcast, and I'm sure that I'm going to have to touch on it again in the future because it is such a consistent topic in our political spectrum currently. But in this episode in particular, I talk about why Republicans were blaming what happened in Texas on green energy and the Green New Deal itself. And then I talk about what is the Green New Deal. I spell it out, what exactly it is. And then the most important question, do we need a Green New Deal? So all of that is discussed in that episode. And then finally, the episode 11 of season 3 is called the Senate Parliamentarian. And I discuss who is the Senate Parliamentarian, why she matters, and how it's tied directly to President Biden and the $15 an hour minimum wage that was supposed to be in the stimulus package but got taken out. So definitely check that out because I think it's very important that everyone knows why the $15 an hour minimum wage is not in the stimulus package. It was originally supposed to. It was taken out. It was taken out because of the Senate Parliamentarian. And I think everyone deserves to know exactly what that means and why that decision was made. My guest for that episode is Coach Tony, the host of the Mud Talk podcast. And we discussed him growing up in the inner city and then getting out of that lifestyle and becoming an entrepreneur and becoming a role model for young Black kids in and around the area that he lives in North Carolina. It was a great conversation that, Coach Tony and I had. I also highly recommend his podcast. That is linked in the episode notes of that episode. Definitely go check that out. Now, with all of that being said, we've had 11 good episodes so far from the beginning of season 3. I still have some great guests that will be coming in the back half of this season. I will be having Leah from the Take Up Space podcast on the very next episode. She will be featured in episode 12. Her and I have a great conversation. In fact, it was so good we had to break it into 2 different episodes. So you're going to hear her twice this second half of the season. I also have Frank Stiles coming on from the 336 Pull Up podcast, and him and I have another great conversation that I can't wait for y'all to hear. I also have Miss Erlene of the Shall We Proceed podcast, and her and I also have some technical difficulties. When I had her on the podcast, I forgot to hit record, and I didn't realize it until about a half an hour into our conversation, so that was pretty embarrassing. But thankfully, she was able to laugh that one off with me, and we were able to record the episode again, and it turned out being a great conversation. I also have my friend V on from the Let's Be Real podcast, and we talk about her being a lesbian woman in Philadelphia and what exactly that's like for her. So that episode will be coming out, later in May. I can't wait for y'all to hear that conversation. And that one was, you know, definitely some of the things she had to say were hard for me to hear, but I feel like they're definitely important things that we need to hear because we don't get enough firsthand testimonials from people kind of like having to deal with that level of discrimination as far as I'm concerned. But also, I have some local political candidates coming on my podcast from the Missoula, Montana area. So if you are a Montanan like I am listening to this podcast, I will be having someone come on my podcast who's running for city council this year. His name is Daniel Carlino. His episode will be coming out very shortly. And Jacob Elder, a candidate running for the mayor of Missoula, will be coming on my podcast the second half of this season. So I have a bunch of great guests and a few more solo episodes. To make sure that you don't miss anything, please subscribe so that you do not miss any of these great episodes that will be coming up. And of course, I'll be talking about the news of the week in the first halves of a lot of these episodes. So stay tuned for what's next from Independent Thought. And as I cut off this little bonus episode here, I'm going to leave you with a clip that is a little bit of the behind the scenes of a conversation that Leah and I have. And she, again, is from the Take Up Space podcast. She will be the guest of the very next episode. So here is some behind the scenes about what her and I were talking about before our episode. And I will see you all again in the very next episode. Thanks for listening. Yeah, I'm gonna be still like recording like segments in front of each like guest interview.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'll be able to kind of stay current with whatever's going on, or if nothing's going on, I got a list full of topics that I wanted to cover at some point that aren't really like pertaining to being current. Like I still wanted to do a Black Lives Matter episode, which I wanted to do, last fall. But I felt like I could just push that a little bit later and just do more election centric stuff at the time.
I think that doing the Black Lives Matter segment anytime this year would definitely be relevant because it's like, hey, we're still Black. We still matter. Because since everybody's like timeline has kind of, I guess, more so gone back to normal.
Exactly.
And the protests have simmered down quite a bit. I think that people are getting back into that comfortable space.
Yeah, which is also why I thought that it'd be appropriate to wait on it because
Right.
because like the thing that I thought that was crazy, which was when I was, living here in Missoula, it felt like a lot of people out here were having their awakening where they were just like, oh my God, can you believe how bad things are in this country for Black people? And I was just sitting there looking at people like, what? What? because you know, there's some people who like, I mean, not some people. There's a lot of people who do not know what I look like because I don't put my picture out there on Instagram, right?
Right.
And so I had some people who were like talking to me in DMs, and they're like, "Do you know like what it's like for Black people in this country?" And I was like, "Oh,
Wow.
tell me what you know,
Oh.
person. I
I
need
just
to
think,
be
tell me
educated
more.
on this matter."
Yes, let me pull up a chair. I want you to inform me of the plight of Black people. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, oh man, it's something else. But you know, I remember when everything was going on in like 20, 15, 2016. I mean, fuck, even 2014. Um, I remember like something would happen, like in the case of like 2014, you had Ferguson
Yep.
popping up, and people would get like, they'd get all kind of activist-y, because I wouldn't really call it, activism, because if it only lasts for like 2 weeks, then
True.
anyway, they get all hype about it, and then, you know, 2 weeks later, it wasn't fashionable anymore, and so they were on to the next thing, right?
Right.
And so I'm like, when this all started happening, when the George Floyd protest started last summer, I was like, I was impressed by how many white people were like engaged, but I also knew that like this ain't gonna last that long. And I remember having that conversation with some people, and they were like, "Well, I'm gonna try my best to make sure that like I stay engaged." And I was like, "It's like it's not like you don't have to talk about something every single day to stay engaged."
Right.
It's like at the same time, like you can't pretend like everything's okay once like once the conversation just isn't a daily topic anymore.
Yeah, I think that there's a fine line, right? I think having an idea is kind of, because I think about it kind of like working out, staying in shape, being healthy, and all that kind of stuff, right? I am not a runner who's going to be out there 5 o'clock in the morning making sure that I get in my 16 miles before I start my day. That's not happening. But a few times a week, if I can set goals, okay, I'm going to make sure that I either shed light, just like how you shed light on the, what is it, Zenxing, Jing?
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't know how to pronounce the city's name either, but yeah, Northwest China.
Right. So just like how you shed light on what's going on there, and it's not for you to tell the entire world to stop what you're doing and look, but even talking about it amongst those in your circle with the intention of informing people, that is a goal that is manageable, that can be hit. And even if you don't talk about it every day, just like, hey, having a conversation about it, okay, well, how can we move forward to action, or even locally, like making sure that talking to the kids, make sure the kids are aware, making sure the people who I am surrounded by are aware of some things that we just let go under the radar because it's been like that always. Like the Harvey Weinstein thing, they wanted a change, so they fought for it until change or until repercussions happened. Because I don't think guys necessarily in that industry change because it's been that way for so long, but I think there has been some incremental changes because they have seen some repercussions happen in the industry. So I think that because I know for me, during the whole, like between May and October, I was done. I was just like, this is so much energy. Like I was so exhausted.
Yeah,
I was exhausted.
we haven't started the episode yet, but I feel like we could just pick this conversation right back up in like 60 seconds. So let me just bring this in, and then we can just bring it right back.
Yeah, sure.